Growing up, many of us enjoy reading poems and even sometimes trying to write a poem of our own. We even do that when we're adults. And somebody who has done it for quite some time is here to tell us about poetry. We have Andres Rodriguez, who is the Poet Laureate of Laredo. Hi, Andres. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for asking me to be here.
Now, you've actually published 2 books. You've gone beyond what might be considered as a hobby, because you actually have 2 books here.
Yes, I have. I published the first one, the one with the red cover here, El Amor y la Poesía, around 1980, and I published 1,300 books, and they've all sold. I only have about 20 left, or 10 left.
Kidding.
Yes, most of them were sold in San Antonio, where I lived some years ago. Then the second book that I published is this one right here, Por Amor, 106 Poesías. This book, of course, has actually 106 poems. It's a very, I think, a very thorough book. It can be used in the programs at school, in the Spanish classes, in the bilingual programs, and of course it could be in the libraries as well.
Now, what do you mean by that? What do you mean they can use them as far as a learning device, or?
I think so. I think it can be used as a supplementary reader in the Spanish classroom, all the way from the 5th grade all the way to the university level, because they're poems of a variety of poems and complexity and all kinds of poetry. And this book, as I said, is very, very complete. It's if I may do so, it has a preface. It has something about myself, first of all, and then it has, the book was dedicated to my daughters. It has the copyright 1993.
A little bit of everything in there then.
Yes.
What's the most important thing, the poems. Let's talk about the poems. Now, they're all in Spanish.
They're all in Castilian Spanish, or I would consider standard Spanish. And it has 10 different categories. I have poems about love, which is 20 poems right here. Poems about nature, la naturaleza. Sonnets, which is a very specific poem. Whether it's in English or in Spanish. I have humorous poems, poems that have a special rhyme scheme, poems about my personal life, poems about life itself, religious poems, and then the big poem about time and space.
And all total up to 106 poems.
106 poems.
So how much time goes into comprising a book like this and even getting 106 poems together?
It took me quite a while. It took me about 6 years to really sit down and write all these poems before I actually published the book.
Now, this is something you do, would you consider it a hobby, or?
No, well, it is, in a way it's a hobby, but however, I think it's just a deep love that I have for writing poems and short stories. I've also written a few short stories in Castilian Spanish, humorous short stories with a surprise ending.
Now, can we expect to see those published later?
Yes, these poems, once upon a time, years ago, this is one of my 6 albums that I have, and I keep them as remind myself of when I published these poems. Like, for example, this is El Mañana from Laredo. This is El Sol de Houston from Houston, Texas.
So you've had many poems published in various newspapers throughout the state.
Throughout the state, and in Mexico as well. In newspapers and magazines and other sources of...
Now, I understand you have poems that are currently being published in one of our local newspapers.
Yes, I do. Laredo, USA has been published about 6 of my poems. They're available at the Cotula restaurant every other Wednesday. And this is an example, Al Llegar la Primavera. It's about a nature poem. And if you'd like to have one, please go by. And you're welcome to have one here at the Cotula.
Title, The Poet Laureate of Laredo. What does that mean?
That means, as I understand it, see, there is such a thing as a Poet Laureate of England. In Texas, they also have a Poet Laureate of the entire state of Texas.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So we currently have one right now?
I'm not altogether sure. I haven't been able to keep up with that, but I know there has been such a thing as a Poet Laureate of the entire state of Texas. As far as I know, also, there's never been a Hispanic Poet Laureate of the state of Texas, so that should be an honor.
Definitely.
And this resolution that I got from the City Council when they voted unanimously on January the 17th, 1994, I was proclaimed, or was given the title of Poet Laureate of Laredo, Texas. And these are the reasons why they selected me as the Poet Laureate.
So have you been the only Poet Laureate of Laredo?
Yes, the first and only Poet Laureate in the history of Laredo, about 200 years. So I feel very honored by having this this proclamation given to me by the mayor.
That's definitely quite an honor. So I understand. Let's talk about the poems in general now.
Yes, of course.
Now you mentioned there's several topics in here.
Yes.
Poems on love, poems on
nature,
humanity, a little bit of everything. How do these poems tie in? Do they tie in?
Yes, well, I have a few local poems. I have a poem about Lago Casablanca, about Lake Casablanca.
Okay. Let's hear about that one.
Okay, I don't know. It's in that book somewhere, but it's a poem that I wrote while I was by myself some years ago in Lake Casablanca, excuse me. And I just got inspired and wrote the poem. And so it became one of the poems that's found in that book.
Now, you don't only write about nature. I understand you've written about some pretty big politicians.
Yes, I have. As I said the last time I was here, I wrote a huge poem, an epic historical poem about our former President of the United States, George Bush. I sent him the poem, we wrote to each other, and then he finally sent me a letter that he wrote himself, and he gives me the thanks for writing the poem, and the poem itself is now part of his Presidential Library collection here in Texas. I don't have the poem itself.
So where can we see this poem displayed then?
Well, I have copies. If anyone is really interested in seeing, and here's a letter from the President, and it says, "The poem will now become a part of my Presidential Library collection. Thank you again for this most thoughtful gift." And this is the poem itself. This is my resolution, but this is a poem.
So you've been on the title of Poet Laureate, but as far as being recognized by former presidents and many things here.
Yes, I've been very fortunate, and sometimes the people stop me on the street and shake my hands, and there was recently a very important educated person called me the President's poet, and he said, "You have written a great poem about the President." And I honestly, sincerely feel that it is a great poem. It's 50 stanzas long. Each stanza has 4 lines, and it has a special rhyme scheme to it. It talks about the President's life when he was a young man, an aviator. It's episodes or adventures as a Navy pilot, and it goes all the way to being President of the U.S.
And it was sent to him in Spanish. In
Spanish. You know, the President is somewhat fluent in Spanish, and so is the governor. They invited me to, I met the First Lady in person, and I also met the governor himself.
So not only has this desire been a part of your life and just, you know, brought you great joy, but you've met many people throughout this also and written about them in the process.
Yes, well, as I've said, the other poems that I've written have been about, for example, I wrote a poem about a former governor of Texas, Ann Richards.
Let's hear about that.
I met her when she came to Laredo, and I embraced her, she embraced me, and I said, "Governor, did you like the poem?" And she said, "Yes, I did. Yes, I did." And so these are very important
another
people.
honor.
Yes, and very important people. I've written poems about also Henry B. Gonzalez, U.S. Senator. I've written to him over the 3 or 4 years. We've been writing letters to each other, about 10 letters from him. So we've got to be pretty good friends.
So what inspires you to write poems about politicians without first knowing them on a personal level?
Well, I've got to the point where I've written over 200 poems, and I said, well, I should write about people. They're all part of our nature, part of our society. And I started with the U.S. Congressman Henry B. Gonzalez, and then I wrote other poems about local people here that are very important people. They've done a great deal to our society, to Laredo and to Texas, and people that are worthy of poetry, writing a poem about them. And so it just went on, and right now
and it went on and on to 2 books.
Yes, yes.
Now I understand we may be expecting another book sometime in the future.
Yes, I'm looking forward. Maybe sometime in the future I have a 3rd manuscript, Por Amor, Tiempo Esías, and these 7 poems about the 2 Republicans, a former president, George Bush, and the First Lady of Texas, Laura Bush. These are the 2 poems about and 5 other poems of Democrats that will be part of the 3rd book. Hopefully there's a 3rd book to be published.
So you've been doing this for 20 some odd years now.
Yes.
How did you get started?
Well, I really, it's probably still a mystery to me. I just feel that I was born with this talent, and I just kept on writing, and I'm still doing it. It's just something that I hope that I'll do it until all the time.
So what advice would you give to someone else who might be interested in also starting a
Well, I would advise that they study, first of all. They go to the university and study the classics, study the, if they want to write in Spanish, they study the poems and the poets of the Hispanic world. If they want to write in English, they should also go and study them. I have a BA in English, and of course, I've taught English and Spanish over about 20 years. So this is you have to study first to become, I think, a good poet or a great poet.
Very important then.
It's very important to do research and to find out what the other persons have done in the field of literature before you actually start writing yourself. But if you are interested, don't give up hope. Just keep on trying and just keep on working at it.
And give us a quick wrap-up of what your plans are in the future as far as poetry.
Well, I intend to, hopefully in some few years, I intend to publish my third book. I intend to keep on selling the book. I've sold over 600 copies here in Laredo alone of this book right here. I've done, from time to time, I do literary presentations. On March the 7th of this year, I made a literary presentation about 30 minutes, 45 minutes to the BEST Club.
So just plenty going on. We can expect plenty more. Thank you so much, Andres, for being on the show and informing us about these 2 books. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And that's all our time for now. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Laredo Life.